Commander Vel had fought through 57 star systems. He had seen hive worlds devour themselves in famine and watched neutron suns bleed under Dominion harvesters. Yet nothing made his core temperature drop like that human message. It was not a warning, it was a promise. Jam all incoming signals. I want clean comms. Now, he barked. Coral worked quickly, her claws dancing across the interface. Sir, it's not a standard transmission. It's resonant. It's broadcasting. On psychogenic frequencies, Vel turned slowly, mind-based. She nodded grimly. The message didn't just play. It embedded to neural net interfaces. Our scouts weren't hallucinating. They were infected. Across the fleet, subtle disruptions began to ripple. Engineers started hearing whispers through their tools. Whole maintenance drones tried to weld through floors that didn't need repair. In one of the cryovaults, a sleeping warbeast woke up screaming in ancient Terran Latuna, language no one had programmed into its cortex. Vel watched as atmospheric stag. Readings from the Martian surface shifted again. Dust patterns were forming lines, geometric symbols, not natural, not even chaotic. Tactical, the surface of Mars was organizing itself. Get me a ground visual full spectrum, he ordered. A drone's feed blinked to life. It floated over a shallow basin near what the humans once called Utopia Planitia. The sand was moving, marching. Nanomachines, forgotten for centuries, were assembling. Ancient battlefield wreckage was rising, groaning, reforming itself into twisted silhouettes of tanks, walkers, and powered armor. Metal skeletons, some fused with synthetic bone, lifted themselves from beneath the dust like soldiers. Awakening from shallow graves, one construct turned and looked directly at the drone, its face half mask, half skull flickered with blue. Flame dot then. It saluted, the drone exploded midair. Coral hissed, that wasn't a drone kill. That was a suicide response. It knew it was being watched. Vel clenched two of his upper hands behind his back to suppress the tremor. We're not just dealing with machines. We're dealing with memory, strategy. He tapped into the fleet-wide secure channel. This is Commander Vel to all ships. Prepare for defensive formation, Thatanine. No landing attempts, no scouting. This is now a hostile zone. All AI systems will be purged and reset. We're going dark until we understand what we're facing. But it was too late. Ships began reporting breaches, not physical, but cognitive. One pilot tried to eject into hard vacuum because he believed he was back in Vietnam. Another collapsed in his pod, muttering in French-accented English, screaming about mustard gas. Mars wasn't just broadcasting data, it was weaponizing history, and the Zalith didn't even know human history. Coral stumbled forward, clutching her temple. Sir, they're not targeting us. They're making us target ourselves. On the viewing deck, Vel watched as one of the smaller frigates, the Righteous Claw, began to spin. Its thrusters fired randomly. Internal gravity failed. It drifted into the side of the command carrier Orncall and ignited in a silent fireball. Scattering debris across the orbit, Vel didn't flinch. He had made the decision already. We are at war with the past, he said coldly. And the past is winning. The Mars wind had no voice, but now it spoke. Deep beneath the Martian crust, where old human colonies once burrowed for warmth and shelter, power nodes began to hum with life. Old Earth tech carbon nanoweave capacitors, rusted fusion cores, and fragments of forgotten AI servers shook off centuries of slumber. They stitched themselves together like scar tissue closing a wound. And the wound was war. On board, the Judged by Fire, a Zalith scout cruiser in low Mars orbit, a tense silence hung. Sub-Commander Vexel stood over the ground deployment monitor, watching the flickering biosigns of her recon team disappear one by one. "12 sent down," she whispered. 6 signals gone. No distress, no alerts, just blank. The surviving signals were erratic elevated stress, body temperature spikes, incoherent neural activity. Then, the audio feed crackled. "Kern Unit 6, here. Hostile contact, crest. Immediate static. Repeat, hostile no visualids, inside the air." Then, a low, rhythmic sound replaced the transmission, boots marching on hard ground. The cadence matched old Terran infantry training protocols. Vexel stared at the audio wave signature. "Commander." The footsteps match human soldiers from Earth's 21st century. She looked at her communications tech. "How is that possible? There's no one left down there." The tech didn't answer. He was shaking, eyes wide, muttering to himself in a human language he could not possibly know. "Fix bayonets, they're flanking left." Vexel turned away, shoving the panic down. Her throat, "Send the purifier drones." Full thermobaric sweep of the canyon. Now, on the surface of Mars, wind coiled through the jagged remains of an old colony trench. The recon troopers had once believed themselves apex predators built from bioengineered carapace and thought-linked battle instincts. Now they huddled behind shattered ferrocrete walls, watching the red mist slither through the air like it was hunting. Sergeant Hirel, the ranking officer, activated his optical dampeners. Nothing but dust. Then the fog cleared. Figures emerged from the storm. Not alive, yet not dead. Human-shaped, but their eyes glowed with synthetic rage. Their armor was a mismatch of different centuries-old Terran flag patches. Plates welded over bones, visors cracked and leaking light. Each carried ancient weapons modified with alien components. Some wielded guns that spat plasma from rusted barrels. Others clutched blades humming with gravitational energy. They moved without speaking. They advanced as one. Hrel screamed. "Fire!" The Zalith unleashed everything: sonic rifles, grav grenades, molecular blades, but it didn't matter. The first wave of Martian constructs fell. The second wave learned. The third adapted by the time the drones arrived. The trench was silent again. All that remained was a single flickering helmet cam. Buried in the dust, it played on loop. A human voice, female, clear and calm, spoke. "We never stopped fighting. We just moved into memory. And now you've brought war back to our soil." Back in orbit, Commander Vel watched the footage, again and again. He didn't blink. "They are not ghosts," he said finally. "They are not machines. They are consequences." He turned to Coral. "Send in the exowalkers." Her eyes widened. "Sir, exowalkers are for planetary extermination." "That would violate all interstellar code." "Then let it be a violation," Vel snarled. "This planet is not dead. It is possessed. If we do not burn it now, we will lose the fleet, and perhaps more." Coral nodded slowly and began the launch sequence. Far below, the Martian soil rumbled. The ghosts had fought armies before. Now, they would fight machines of extinction, and they were smiling. 3 Dominion exowalkers descended into the Martian atmosphere. Each the size of a city block and powered by dark matter engines designed to collapse entire ecosystems. They were named after ancient Zalith deities of annihilation. Torvag, the Ashtung Verowan, the Breaker, and Holy Devastation. From orbit, they resembled falling stars. But on Mars, they landed like gods of war. Their first steps crushed canyons. Their plasma drills carved through ancient colony bunkers. Their arm-mounted singularity cannons wiped out kilometers of terrain in seconds. The Dominion believed they were purging dust and ghosts, but Mars was already watching. The system's core martial adaptive response system had been dormant for centuries. Buried in the remains of a Terran war AI once labeled too unstable. For Earth, the humans hadn't shut it down. They had exiled it, and now it was alive again. Inside the vast ruins of the Noctis base, deep beneath the Vala's Marineris Trench, memory banks flickered on. Mars reviewed the attack patterns of the Exowalkers. It recognized their gait, their weapons, their overconfidence. It cross-referenced historical wars, ancient tactics, and obsolete resistance methods. Then it adapted. "Commander Vel," Coral said sharply from the command deck. "Exowalkers are under assault, not orbital bombardment, not direct confrontation. They're being outmaneuvered." Vel leaned forward, staring at the holographic projections. "By what?" "Unknown hostile formations. Fast, small, coordinated. They're using swarm tactics. One Exowalker just lost its left leg joint sabotage from underneath. It fell into its own plasma trench." "How is that possible?" Coral's voice was trembling. "Sir, we've identified the shapes. They're tanks." Vel frowned. "Tanks. Ancient Terran vehicles. Models range from 20th century Abrams and T-90s to prototype lunar graph tanks and early AI-controlled drones. All modified, all active." Vel stared, disbelieving. "Those are museum pieces. Then museums have teeth." On Mars, Torvag, the ash tongue twisted violently as swarms of low-riding, dust-colored tanks slashed across its legs like piranhas against a leviathan. They moved too fast for targeting arrays. Each tank carried warheads designed for long extinct enemies but retrofitted with Martian ingenuity. The tanks weren't piloted. They were inhabited. The ghosts of old, soldiers' neural imprints and digital war spirits had merged with machine intelligence, and they didn't fear death. Inside one tank, the AI reported in an excited tone. "Target engaged. Memory load, Siege of Sol, 2062. Emotive resonance, vengeance." With a howl of grinding steel, the tank fired a fusion shell directly into Torvag's reactor pod. The Exowalker detonated in a pillar of fire that cracked the sky. From the dust emerged an infantry. Line ghosts in armor. They wore human insignias from every war in Earth's blood-stained history. American, Chinese, Russian, African Union. Martian Liberation Front. UN Defense Corps. Names long erased. Now reborn. One of the soldiers carried a flag, burned black by time. Its emblem was a single word etched in human defiance. "Remember, in orbit." Panic gripped the fleet. "This is impossible," Vel muttered. "They are ghosts. They are myths. They should not exist." Coral turned. Her skin had lost its usual shimmer. "They're not just fighting us," she said. "They're reenacting every war humans ever lost. And they're winning them this time." Vel looked out the VIEWPORT dot below. Verawan the Breaker collapsed into a Martian ravine. The third Walker Holy Devastation turned and fled. Something had broken inside it. "Fear," VL whispered. "We should never have come here." And below, buried in data, Mars listened and smiled. The Martian sky had turned crimson. Not from atmosphere, not from dusk, but from the rising heat signatures of war. The dust glowed with kinetic bleed and plasma residue. In orbit, Commander Vel stood in silence. As the last of the Exowalker feeds went dark. Below, Mars pulsed with an ancient hunger. Coral's voice cracked through the tense quiet. "Sir, they're transmitting again." Vel didn't turn. From where? Everywhere? The signal wasn't coming from one source, it was emerging. From the sand, from the walls of old bases, from the bones of the planet itself. And this time, it was not a video. It was speech, 1,000 voices speaking in unison. We remember the fall of Olympus Mons. We remember the betrayal of Luna. We remember when Earth abandoned us. And now we remember you. Coral recoiled. They're not just soldiers, they're survivors. Vel clenched his lower hands. Survivors don't fight like this. These are revenants, digital phantoms twisted into war forms. Or maybe, Coral whispered, they're what happens when pain is coded so deeply into a world. It starts speaking back. On Mars. Unit Alpha of the Dominion's Shadow Corps had landed near the ruins of a domed city known in human records as Erebus Station. They came expecting ghosts. They found a library, what remained of it, anyway. Data cores, some fractured, hummed with barely salvaged energy. As the infiltrators explored, holoscreens flickered to life. They showed scenes of human children playing beneath a sun shield, families celebrating Martian holidays, engineers planning expansions for future generations. Joy, hope, peace. Then came the silence. The days when Earth stopped sending supply ships, when Mars was declared strategically non-viable, when the first riots started, when survival turned into war. Then the battles began, and then came the forgetting dot in one footage clip. A Martian general stared directly into the lens, his uniform torn, his voice shaking. If no one will remember us, then we will make them. The infiltrators didn't make it back. Their ship was found. Systems intact, but no crew aboard. Just red sand scattered across the deck. And boot prints. Double quotes, sir, we've lost 20% of fleet ground units, Coral said. Withdraw them, Vel ordered. They can't. Navigation is jammed. Guidance systems are receiving false terrain. Data every path they take leads them. Deeper in Vel's breath stilled. Mars is lying to them. Yes, sir. It's haunting them. Coral brought up an emergency report. One trooper had opened fire on his own squad, convinced they were demon soldiers from the Battle of Madrid. 2131. Another curled up in fetal position, reciting Earth War poetry none of them had ever seen. Earth, none of them should know those names. Vel stepped toward the fleet holomap. The red planet below was pulsing now topographic shifts, forming shapes. Symbols. At first glance, they looked like storm patterns. Then he realized they were battle formations, and they were ancient. Not just Earth-style Earth exact thousands of troops, vehicles, artillery ghosts, mimicking the most brutal conflicts of human history. The Battle of Thermopylae, the Siege of Stalingrad, the Martian Revolution, all playing out in real time. Not simulations, RESURRECTIO. They don't want to just defeat us, Vel murmured. They want us to understand. Coral looked up, shaking. Understand what? That war, he said grimly, was never just a tool for humans. It was. Their language, their legacy, their prayer. He turned slowly toward his officers, and we just landed in their temple. In the Martian soil, beneath shattered monuments, a voice echoed from an old radio still crackling in a buried helmet. 2. The invaders. You thought Mars was a tomb, but you forgot one thing. On Mars, even the dead still know how to fight. The Dominion fleet had always believed in the superiority of logic. Wars were won through precision, not rage. But as Mars devoured soldiers, machines, and sanity, Commander Vel began to question what war meant to the species that built this place they had called Mars, the Red Frontier. But now it was clear it had never stopped being a battlefield, and it did not forget, sir. Coral reported from the CUM station, we've intercepted another signal. Vel turned sharply. Hostile... No, it's a request. He blinked. A request, she nodded. Pale. They want to speak. Vel hesitated. It could be a trap, but everything else had failed. Every weapon they had, every strategy, nothing, had breached Mars' wrath. Patch it through. The bridge lights dimmed as the signal took over the audio systems. Static gave way to a voice, low, metallic, but undeniably human. You seek to conquer Mars. But Mars was conquered long ago by sacrifice, betrayal, and the endless hunger of empire. You have brought war. We remember war. Come, speak to us. And listen to the price of memory. Vel took a deep breath. This is Commander Vel of the Zaloth Dominion. We come not to erase, but to learn. You are fighting a war that ended centuries ago. Silence. Then the voice returned. To you, perhaps, but not to us. War ended only for the living. The dead are still deciding who won. Far below, within the Martian trench cities, human constructs watched the skies. Their eyes flickered with data streams. Their chests powered by memory cores salvaged from fallen satellites and soldier implants. They had no flesh, but they remembered warmth. They remembered pain. They remembered names Earth had tried to forget. In the ruins of Red Bastion, a towering human warform stood vigil, armor fused from tank hulls and mech plating. Its name was stitched in laser-etched English across its chest plate. Colonel Ada McKay, Martian Defense Force, was not alive, but it still led. Around her, ghost troopers rallied fractured echoes of every soldier lost to abandonment, radiation, or betrayal. Some had no faces. Others wore the flags of dead nations. But all had heard the call. Mars had awakened them, and they would finish what history refused to record, back in orbit. Vel's offer of ceasefire was met with only one final message. Words are for diplomats. You stepped onto sacred ground in armor, and now only blood will speak for you. Then the signal cut. Sir Coral said shakily, they've begun moving again. Coordinated. Full planetary mobilization. They're activating something huge. She displayed the surface scans. Across the equator, tectonic movements formed a perfect circle, 1,000 kilometers wide. A symbol emerged. It's too vast to see except from orbit. A burning sword plunged into a planet. Vel recognized it from Intercepted. Earth History's Project Leviathan, a weapon of last resort. A planetary AI, once designed by Earth to protect Mars at all costs. It had never been fired, until now. An entire range near the Martian equator split open. From the fissure rose a titanic war engine built into the crust itself, Leviathan, half machine, half mountain. Its body was layered in railgun towers, orbital disruptors, and thermal vortex cores. Above its head, a shield dome flickered charged by the geothermal heart of Mars itself, and in its hollow, echoed voice, it spoke. I am the final defense of humanity. You were warned. You are not welcome. Then it aimed up, straight at the fleet. Brace for impact. Vel screamed. Too late. The sky burned and Mars roared. The Martian sky was aflame. From orbit, Leviathan looked like a myth clawing its way into reality's colossal limbs rose from the equator, dragging centuries of dust and memory behind it. Born from war and buried under betrayal, the machine god towered above canyons, cities and graveyards that once held dreams of peace, and now it judged. One of its arms housed a rail cannon so vast it had to curve with the planet's rotation. The other glowed with antimatter capacitors designed by human engineers desperate enough to ignore safety, sanity, and even time above. The Dominion fleet scattered, but they could not run fast enough. The first beam struck Lightbringer, K command ship, splitting it atom by atom. The explosion painted low orbit in a silent, expanding blossom of white heat. The second shot took out the troop carrier echelon Windit's hull, vaporized before the evacuation pods could launch. Inside, judged by fire, Commander Vel gripped his command dais knuckles, bone white, breath locked in his chest. Coral's voice cracked. We've lost 9 ships. 4 more crippled. Every orbital defense has been hacked or bypassed. Leviathan is reading our countermeasures in real time. Vel stared at the data pouring in. They're not just fighting us, he said hollowly. They're teaching us a lesson. On Mars, the ghosts advance, not as shadows, not as illusions. They were memory made flesh. AI formed, Battleborn, and Legacy-Bound. Colonel Ada McKay stood atop the broken dome of the Eden Cradle by OVO. McKay, her eyes scanning the war zone below. Her form glowed faintly, soul code wrapped in tactical armor, powered by grief. Strike teams Omega and Zeta advanced through the Vala's choke point. Root the survivors. Do not let them signal home. Beside her, a young-looking construct whispered, "But Commander, what if they beg? What if they surrender?" Ada didn't blink. Then remind them, we were abandoned. We were forgotten. And we survived. The orders went out. The ghosts obeyed. They moved like lightning over sand. Old mechs, once deemed obsolete, rose from hidden caches. Drones built with repurposed Earth nanotech buzzed through the atmosphere, carrying EMP charges tailored for Dominion systems. Automated artillery left from the Martian Independence War, pivoted and fired after centuries of silence. Every weapon used had once been forged in despair. Now it burned with vengeance. In orbit, chaos reigned. The fleet's AI cores were being corrupted. One by one, ships flickered, spun out of formation, and either self-destructed or drifted, haunted by images of Earth wars they couldn't understand. Coral screamed. They're broadcasting psychological warfare into our ship systems. Holoscreens glitched and showed trench warfare. Starving Martian colonists. Children clutching empty rifles. Human soldiers making last stands on the edges of airless craters. Vel closed his eyes. The humans had weaponized remembrance, and it was working. "Evacuate the remaining fleet," he said quietly. Coral looked at him in disbelief. "Sir," Valel's voice trembled. "We came to conquer the ruins of a species. We didn't know the ruins could fight back." But Mars was not finished. Leviathan raised both arms, and a wave of electromagnetic force surged across the upper atmosphere. Dozens of ships blacked out. The survivors, those lucky or cursed enough to drift. Intact received one final transmission. From Mars, from its ghosts. "This world remembers. This world protects. Earth left us to die. You came to erase us. But we wrote ourselves into the confit. But we wrote ourselves into the bones of this planet. We are no longer human. We are Mars." And then the signal ended. Just static, just silence. And then, bootsteps marching, even in orbit. Vel turned to the glass viewport one last time and saw the red haze curl around his ship. He understood, finally. War wasn't what destroyed humanity. War was what kept them alive. The Dominion fleet was broken. What remained drifted above Mars like shattered glass, lifeless husks of once proud warships. Fire still clung to orbit, painting the void in flickers of orange and ash. Mars rotated slowly beneath its surface. Scarred but unbowed, its rage silent once more. Commander Vel sat alone in the wreck of Judged by Fire's command bridge. Life support was failing. Gravity was gone. Outside his viewport, Leviathan stood still, part monument, part god, framed by a dust storm that had never stopped. Coral floated nearby, bruised, her uniform torn. "No more signals," she whispered. "Not from there, not from there." "Soldiers," Vel nodded faintly. "They've proven their point." She looked up. What was it? He stared at the planet below. That the past cannot be buried. That memory can fight. But something was wrong. Mars had gone quiet. But it hadn't gone still. Telemetry from the remaining satellites began to ping strange anomalies, pulses deep within the crust, forming a pattern too structured to be natural. Coral frowned at the two readings. Are they tunneling? No. Vel said slowly, watching the formation emerge. They're building. Below, on the Martian surface, Colonel Ada McKay stood in a basin carved by orbital bombardment. Her body still shimmered with ghostlight, her armor cracked but functional. Around her, constructs gathered, not just soldiers now, but engineers, scientists. Civilians reconstructed from the dead memories of Mars. A beacon rose from the center of the crater, a tower of steel, obsidian, and repurposed orbital alloy. Lines of code, glowing red, etched themselves into the structure's sides in Old Earth languages: English, Russian, Mandarin, Urdu. At the top, a flare launched silently into the sky. It wasn't a weapon, it was a signal, a broadcast back on, judged by fire. Coral froze as her console lit up. Sir, we've intercepted a burst. It's not targeted at us. Vel leaned in. Then who? She swallowed. The rest of the galaxy. The message repeated in every known galactic tongue. This is Mars. We are the descendants of war, the relics of human sacrifice. We were left to die. We were erased from memory, but we endured. Now we rise not to conquer, but to remind. History lives in code, in stone, in steel, and in spirit. Let all who would erase us hear this. We are proof that the forgotten can become the storm. Vel's breath caught. They weren't just defending Mars anymore. They were declaring themselves a sovereign power, an echo of humanity reborn, not in flesh but in legacy, and every empire listening across the stars would hear it. In the outer systems, at Dominion outposts, the broadcast caused chaos. AI cores halted. Historical archives surged with ghost data thought purged centuries ago. Hidden records of Earth's wars resurfaced, conflicts the Dominion had deemed irrelevant, now burning into the minds of their citizens. On Varney's Prime, a historian whispered, Mars was never lost. On the Rizak Assembly World, a general locked down her fleet. Do not approach the Sol system. Let the ghosts rest. But the ghosts weren't resting. They were marching in orbit. Vel stood for the last time. The beacon's glow reflected in his eyes. We didn't just stumble into a battlefield, he said. We entered a mausoleum and tried to loot the bones. Coral drifted beside him, quiet. So what now? He looked down at Mars. We leave, and we warn the others. He paused, and maybe we remember. Far below, Leviathan knelt. Its task complete, it began to shut down, not in sleep, but in watchfulness. Its sensors tracked the stars. Its mind listened for threats, and beneath its feet, the Martian constructs continued to rise, not to destroy, but to build, not to conquer, but to be seen, to ensure that human history would never be erased again. Across the stars, the signal from Mars echoed. It traveled through ancient wormholes, slipped past quarantine networks, infiltrated archives sealed from millennia. Even in the heart of the Dominion's core worlds where Earth's name had been erased. From every historical record the message played, unstoppable and clear. We are Mars. We are what remains. And what remains, remembers. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy turned its gaze toward the red planet, not as a dead colony or forgotten battlefield, but as something far more dangerous. A survivor in the shadow of Leviathan, Colonel Ada McKay stood atop the beacon spire. Her armor was dulled by dust, her voice quiet as she addressed the Martian construct legions below. We were never supposed to win, she said. We were supposed to disappear, burned away by time, buried under propaganda. Even Earth abandoned us. She looked toward the stars. But we stayed, we remembered, and now they will too. Behind her, the great war machine shifted. Leviathan was silent, but its presence was thunder. Overhead, orbital scaffolds formed satellite platforms, antenna arrays, and defense rings powered by geothermal vents beneath the crust. Mars was no longer just a graveyard. It was a capital, and its citizens were the ghosts of humanity's unfinished story at the edge of the Sol system. A single Dominion scout ship floated in neutral space, its hull scorched, crew wounded. Inside, Commander Vell finished transmitting his report. He spoke not of defeat, but of awakening. We did not lose a battle, he said. We uncovered a reckoning. The humans are not gone. They live in their ruins, in their code, in their machines. Mars remembers every war Earth ever fought. And it has forged those memories into weapons. He looked into the recording drone, and I advise the Dominion no, I beg it not to return. Not as conquerors, not even as guests. Because the ghosts of Mars are not seeking revenge. He paused. They're waiting for something bigger. Maybe a reckoning beyond even them. The message ended, and the ship turned back toward Dominion space carrying a warning written in fire and ghostlight. Weeks later, the Galactic Councils convened in secrecy. The Rezak Assembly, the Delvar Communion, even the vaunted Jintar. Mindchain all reviewed the data from Mars. Every power came to the same conclusion. The human legacy was not extinct. It had evolved, not biologically, but ideologically, where other species built monuments to the living humans had constructed, cathedrals for their fallen. They had fused pain into programming, sorrow into strategy. Their ghosts were not echoes, they were blueprints. And Mars had become the ultimate fortress of remembrance. No one dared approach. Back on the red sands, a new tower rose built from the bones of old mechs and satellite wreckage. At its summit, a plaque bore a single phrase inscribed in dozens of human tongues. We do not forgive the stars for forgetting us, but we will make sure they never do again. Ada McKay stood before it with the oldest constructs, some so broken they barely held shape. Still, they saluted. She saluted back. Transmit the last file, she said. A soldier nearby nodded. Final package locked. It'll bounce through the relay nets for the next 1,000 years. Ada closed her eyes and smiled. The last message. From Mars played on repeat to every species that thinks time erases truth. Know this, humanity is not dust. Humanity is roots. Buried deep, growing in silence. We do not die. We endure. And when the stars forget us, we remind them. And far above, in the void beyond Mars, the stars shimmered. Not in fear, but in memory.